This ad placement is paid for by Bath & Body Works. They've just launched a new home fragrance collection that smells great and looks even better. It's called the Reserve Collection, and it's designed to elevate the feeling of your home. If your place is in need of a mood change, the Reserve Collection has a fragrance lineup that's crafted to bring lift-in luxury to every room in your space. Start with the new fragrance-infused liquidless reeds and vessel, giving you the spill-free way you need to scent your space. Or go big with the 4-wick ceramic candle. More wicks and more wow. Try Santal and Amber if you love something warm and a little unexpected, or Vanilla and Tonka if you want cozy but still put together. It's less about matching a trend and more about making your space actually feel like you. Bath & Body Works' new 4-wick ceramic candle burns up to 70 hours, and the fragrance-infused liquidless reeds and vessel gives you all the fragrance with zero mess. Shop the Reserve Collection now at bathandbodyworks.com.
Everyone treats summer like it owes you happiness. Long days, pool parties, your best life on a loop. So what does it mean when you feel worse? The summer blues are real. It's why summer is one of the busiest stretches of the year for people starting therapy. Therapy is not only for when you're in crisis. Growth therapy is for all the moments when you decide you want more. More support, more clarity, more tools. Mental health isn't a destination you reach. It's something you build, and Grow makes that easier. Grow connects you with thousands of high-quality licensed therapists across the U.S., offering both virtual and in-person sessions, nights and weekends. You can search by what matters, like insurance, specialty, identity, or availability, and get started in as little as 2 days. There are no subscriptions, no long-term commitments. You just pay per session. Grow helps you find therapy on your time. The therapist you want takes your insurance on Grow. Grow accepts over 125 insurance plans. Sessions average $21 with insurance, and some pay as little as $0 depending on their plan. Visit growtherapy.com/booknow today to get started. That's growtherapy.com/booknow. growtherapy.com/booknow. Availability and coverage vary by state and insurance plan.
Hello, welcome back to the Created Worthy podcast. Today, I am joined by another worthy warrior, Jill L. Ferguson. Jill is a multi-passionate creator, award-winning writer, and serial entrepreneur who's dedicated her life to empowering others through words and wisdom. She has authored or ghostwritten dozens of books, created transformative courses and workshops, and has founded 13 companies across various industries, from publishing and wellness to education and entrepreneurship. Jill is the founder of Creating the Freelance Career, a platform equipping creatives and professionals to thrive on their own terms. I'm really excited to hear more about that. And she also is the founder of Let's Talk About Love, a social purpose corporation. Her work has been featured in Entrepreneur, The Chronicle of Higher Education, and HuffPost, and she's been named an expert to know by LA Weekly and an industry disruptor by Maxim magazine. Known for her candor and compassion, Jill isn't afraid to share the hard parts of her story, from personal heartbreak to professional pivots, because she believes that that's where the deepest connection lives. Whether she's coaching aspiring authors or hosting intentional conversations about love and healing, Jill brings her full self to the table with courage, creativity, and a contagious joy for life. She currently lives in California with her beloved canine sidekicks and works with clients across the globe. Jill, thank you so much for being here, and I am so excited to hear more about your story.
Thank you so much for having me on your show. I'm very excited about it.
So let's start at the beginning. Take me back, paint a little picture for me of what your early years were like. Where were you born, and what was your childhood like?
I grew up in Pennsylvania, in Western Pennsylvania, in a place where when my parents built their house in 1969, you had to have an acre to build. So it's not exactly rural, but it's more suburban, but it's not as suburban like subdivision-y as people have now.
Yeah.
Pretty good childhood and was super creative from a young age. I remember actually writing and illustrating my first book when I was 5.
Wow.
And I was sitting at my mother owned a beauty shop. She worked in beauty shop with somebody else for a while. And then when she decided to have kids, she moved the beauty shop into the downstairs of my parents' house. There was a little red desk that it had been my dad's in childhood, and it had the inkwell in it and everything else.
Yeah.
The iron legs and the wooden bottom. And I sat there at that little red desk with my 2 braids down the back of my blonde hair and wrote a story about a cat. And then I decided to illustrate it in watercolor. And as a
Fun.
and as a 5-year-old, you don't understand the ratio of paint, water, and paper
Yeah.
together. So I ended up creating this soppy mess. I remember just taking my little fists and crinkling it all up into a ball. I was so frustrated that this thing that I had this great vision for turned out to be just a soggy mess.
Yeah.
And I threw it away. But that is the memory I have of the first book I ever wrote.
You know what? That sounds so much like something my daughter has done. How
Yeah.
old were you when that happened? 5?
5. Yeah.
Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. That was a passion though, right?
Yes.
Even from that's probably one of your earliest memories. It's of doing something that you love to do and clearly has carried on to be a huge part of the work that you do. And I'm sure your purpose is tied in there as well.
Yes.
So through your childhood, what would you say some of the most important lessons were that you learned throughout it, specifically between 0 and 18?
Oh, 0 and 18.
Yeah.
I developed a great love for animals. I really compassion for them and everything else. We would collect tadpoles from my grandmother's in-ground pool and grow them in giant aquariums into frogs and then let them go. My dad, one of his closest friends, worked for the Pennsylvania Game Commission. And so if they ended up with a hurt or injured animal and they had too many animals for too little space, they would sometimes come to our house. I grew up learning to feed baby possums and raccoons, which, by the way, they're adorable, but they are not nice. They're nasty.
I just saw a video of them today and I was like,
Yeah.
there was a mom and their babies.
Yeah.
So I'm
So
glad.
they got some teeth, and we had special gloves that you had to wear when you fed them and stuff because they could be mean.
Yeah.
And we had a deer that was hit by a car giving birth. And so we ended up with the fawn, and we raised that fawn until it was able to eat on its own, and it went off to the Columbus Zoo.
That's so cute.
Yeah, I named it Bucky because
Oh.
it used to kick its back legs out all the time if we kept it in a smaller space at night for it to sleep, and it didn't like being in there without the family.
Oh, so it was like a part of the family.
In some ways, yeah.
Yeah. Did it sleep inside?
It slept inside in my mother's beauty shop bathroom because that was a place to keep it contained, and it had the type of tile floor that it wasn't the kind of old linoleum tile.
Yeah.
That was easy for hair to get cleaned up and stuff on, but it was also easier to clean up after a deer.
Yeah. That's fair. Oh my goodness. I love that. I feel like that is a very Pennsylvania story.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. If you know anything about Pennsylvania, they have more deer per capita than anywhere else in the country.
Yes. We went to Pennsylvania last year. Honestly, I've never seen more deer. And they were so pretty. They're so much different than the deer that we have here in Colorado.
Yeah, they are. They're big, a
Yeah.
lot bigger than a lot of places. And they're just very stately white-tailed deer.
Yeah.
Good size and just
So
gorgeous.
good. So you learned how to care for animals.
Yeah.
You learned how.
And I grew up in a very Christian household.
Okay.
And so we were in church Sunday morning, Sunday night, Wednesday. And then from the time I was probably 11 or 12, I was really active in the youth group that I grew up in, and was on the board of the youth group from the time I was 12 until 16 or 17.
Wow. So younger years, you were in church.
Yeah.
Went to youth group. Is that what you said?
No, it had a board. And so I was on the board.
There was a board in the youth group?
Yeah.
How organized.
Yeah.
I love that.
The youth group was in some ways very much set up like the bigger church was.
Wow.
So it had a worship team, and I was the lead singer of the worship team. And we met every Friday, and sometimes and there was somewhere between 150 and 200 kids that went.
Oh, it was quite
And
large.
Yeah, it was quite large. And then sometimes we would do things with the neighboring kind of churches in the area. And so sometimes there was 500, 600, 700 people there.
Wow, that's
Um,
amazing. So I'm sure you learned a lot about almost running a business by being on a
yeah.
board,
Yeah, and
being leadership at least.
yeah. And
Yeah.
it was one of those boards that was elected by the
Oh,
people who went to the
yeah.
youth group. So
That's
yeah.
awesome. Did you have to campaign and everything?
No, I didn't campaign at all. And I was the youngest member on it, the one I first got elected onto it.
That's amazing though, because
Yeah.
obviously whoever was was it the youth themselves who voted or the
Yeah,
staff?
it was the youth themselves.
So
And
they
yeah.
saw leadership in you. That's a gift.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
awesome. So tell me about life after you became an adult. What was early adulthood like for you?
Early adulthood was really figuring out who I was separate from everything else. The church that I was just talking about, I left it before I was 18 and my parents were still there, but I chose a church for myself that felt more me, if you will.
Yeah.
And then I moved away from the area and actually became part of staff of a different church. After I graduated college, actually,
Okay.
from university, I worked for a little over a year as an outreach coordinator at a church in a very rural part of Pennsylvania.
Okay.
And so that was a big adjustment.
What did you go to school for?
That's a tricky one.
Okay.
So, freshman year of college, I went to a school in Missouri and I had a double major of vocal performance and theater.
Wow. You're a theater girl. I
Yes.
love my fellow theater people. Now
yeah.
I'm looking at your posters and I'm like, yeah, okay.
Yeah, those are some of my books behind me, or the covers of them.
Yeah.
So I did that for my freshman year. My sophomore year, I needed to transfer to a school a little bit closer to home. And the place that I transferred to didn't quite have the same programs. So I ended up studying marketing and home economics because
Wow.
I could do theater or costume design with the home ec.
Yeah.
At least that was my
That's
thoughts
a
as
creative twist.
18
I
and a
love
half year
it.
old.
Yeah.
So I did that for a year and worked while I went to school too. And the day that I was coming home from sophomore year of university for the summer, my grandfather woke up paralyzed from the base of his neck down.
My goodness.
And it turned out that he had bone cancer that had been misdiagnosed. And my grandmother and grandfather lived about 7 miles from my parents' house. And so I made my own executive decision at the age of 19 that I was needed more back at home. So I transferred to a small Catholic university that was closer to my parents' house. And I moved back in and I helped out at home. I also worked a full-time job and went to school full-time. And by December of that same year, 7 days before Christmas, my grandfather died. My grandmother didn't drive and hadn't driven her whole life. So that was part of the reason why I was like, no, I need to help out because clearly I can drive and my parents can't do everything. So I ended up staying at that school and graduating from there. And it has a very special place in my heart. Actually, I fund 4 scholarships a year there and have since the year 2000.
Wow. That's
And
amazing.
yeah, but during that
able to give
journey,
in that way.
you really start to decide who you are separate from your parents, right? That's part of what university is. I know in teen years, some people get there more than others because I was living with my parents, and I wouldn't say they were strict, but they definitely had high expectations. You behave in a certain way. And so I think that as the older you get, the more you evolve, if you will, and figure out who you are for yourself.
For sure. You mature, you learn how to be a contributing member of society and how to be an adult. I know the term adulting is overused, but as someone who is entering a older stage of my early adulthood,
Yeah.
I realize that it takes time to learn how to be an adult, to adult. In verb form.
And it's also like, I read years and years ago, maybe 20 years ago in The Atlantic, there was an article that said it literally, if you go back to your parents' house that you grew up in and your parents or your siblings are there, it takes you 30 seconds before you start acting like when you lived there. And regardless of all the growth you've done in the meantime.
It's just it's that nature versus nurture. It's that nurture
Yeah.
is stronger in adulthood, where it feels like nature is a little stronger in childhood, at least at dealing with a 9-year-old.
Yeah.
So preteen.
I don't know, you figure out what's important to you. You also, I think, learn more about how others see you as opposed to how you've been seen by your parents and your siblings, right?
Yeah. No,
And
for sure.
there can be a big disconnect between those things.
Yes. So at what point did you begin your career in the writing and coaching industry? Did you start in this industry, or where did you start at?
I've always been in the writing space. I started writing for publications at the age of 12, and I did that through high school. I did that through
And that was as a
university.
freelancer.
As a freelancer, yeah. And then
Things are starting to click.
then while I was in my early 20s, even like the year that I spent working for the Presbyterian Church in this little small community, I was still sending stuff out to publications and writing for magazines and newspapers and stuff. And then when I moved back home at the end of that job, I actually moved back to my parents' house for a couple of years. I was working freelance for the local newspaper, which was the big daily newspaper in Pittsburgh.
Amazing.
And yeah, did
you like that?
Doing that and other things. Yeah.
Okay. Because you were still a freelancer. You weren't like working in the...
Yeah, I was still a freelancer.
Okay.
I didn't start working full time at newspaper or magazine until I was 25, going to be 26. And then I became an associate editor at a newspaper in Texas.
Okay.
So,
and so did you move to Texas for that job?
No. I moved to Texas to be with the man who became my husband.
Okay.
I moved there after we got married.
Tell me about the beginning of your relationship and how you guys met and all of that.
Okay. So we're talking about my first husband, and we met.
Context. Husband.
Context. We met, there was a mutual family friend of both of our families that had known both of us most of our lives. And she literally called me on the phone one day and said, and she had kids that were just a little bit younger than me, and said, I was praying for you this morning. I felt God told me that you're to meet my friend's son. And I said, oh, okay.
Very awkward.
And she said, he lives in Texas. He lives in Austin. I was living in Pennsylvania. The woman who called me was living in Eden, New York, which is outside of Buffalo.
Okay.
And she said, if you're meant to meet him, you will. And I was like, yeah, okay. Like, I can accept that, but I'm still a little skeptical here.
Yeah.
And I had other people that had said, I want you to meet my grandson or whatever.
Yeah.
And I'd meet them and I'd be like, the thoughts in your head, are you kidding me? This isn't a good match at all.
Yes. Yeah, no, for sure. I think that is a common practice within the Christian community, especially.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, I was out of university without an MRS degree. And
oh no, you didn't get ring by spring.
Yeah, that's right. Anyway, a few weeks later, I got a message from the guy, an email actually, saying, so-and-so gave me your email address. I hope this is okay. I'm flying to Buffalo to see my parents for my mother's birthday. And I ended up having to fly through Pittsburgh. Did you want to meet me at the airport and have a meal and say hi? And I was like, yeah, I could do that. And it was my birthday that week that he was asking me to meet. And so...
Were you like, is this a sign?
No, I didn't think it was a sign. I just figured, what the heck, I'll give it a shot and see. Because it was like a day or two. It was going to be a day or two later, right? Mm-hmm. I drove the hour to the airport. This was back before there was all that security. It was in 1995.
The good old days.
Yeah. And so he got off the plane, and in case he listens to this, I will not voice what my first thought was.
Okay. Fair enough.
But he was a mess. He was just like emotionally a mess because I guess there was a guy who had been sitting next to him and had spilled some Coke on him and stuff. And so he gets off the plane, he says hi to me, and he's like, excuse me, I need to go to the restroom. And I'm like, okay. He leaves and goes to the restroom. It feels like it's 10 minutes later at least. And I'm just thinking, oh my gosh, he must be sick or something. He comes back out and he's like, then he explains to me about trying to get this thing off his shirt. So we went, used to be a TGI Fridays in the airport. Actually, I think it's still there, but it may have moved. And so
fun fact about potentially about Pittsburgh Airport.
Yeah. So we went into their had dinner. He had brought me a T-shirt for my birthday as a gift that said Austin on it, which was really nice of him because he hadn't met me before. We had a nice conversation, and then he said, "How about if I give you a call when I get back to Texas?" And I said, "Okay." So he was with his parents over the weekend, and when he got back to Texas, he called, and we talked a few times on the phone, and then he asked if I wanted to fly out to Texas to spend some time with him. So we started flying back and forth a little bit. Sure enough, by fall, we were engaged. So we met like on the 23rd or so of May in 1995, and January 20th, we were married of 1996.
Wow. Less than a year.
Yeah, it was very fast.
Yeah. But you're following your heart.
Yes. And so that's why I moved to Texas, was to be with him. And I was only there for a year. We had gone hiking at Mount Rainier and that fall, and he saw a job he wanted, and he said, when we get back, I'm going to apply for this job. And it was in Seattle. He said, okay. And I said, yeah, it's fine. I was working for the newspaper in Texas, and I was also doing a bunch of freelance work, like on a kids direct to video puppet show. I was writing scripts, and I was writing for magazines and newspapers and things. It didn't really matter to me where I lived so much.
Yeah.
And so he applied for the job, and on a Tuesday, on Wednesday, they did a phone interview. On Friday, they flew him up for the in-person interview Thursday night. Friday was the interview. Saturday, they offered him the job, and then they told us we had 30 days to get to Seattle. We moved and spent 3 years there.
Okay.
And before we moved to the Bay Area. Yeah. And that last year we were in Seattle. He worked actually in the Silicon Valley for the whole year. The dogs and I would drive him to the airport on Monday morning and pick him up on Thursday night or Friday. It was nice. It was amazing.
Austin is like a strangely beautiful area.
Yeah,
it's beautiful. Yeah. I have spent a little bit of time there last year and I loved it. And Seattle, I've actually never been to, but I've heard it's beautiful and rainy.
It is beautiful.
And a little depressing.
Yes. I have a theory that grunge music couldn't have been created anywhere else. There's an interesting energy there. It's become a little lighter over the years than it was back in the 90s, but the late 90s, but it was definitely a unique place. But yes, it rains so much.
Yeah.
So and the gray days so moving to California was really nice after that.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Yeah. So I imagine California was wonderful. You saw the sun again.
Yeah, Texas looks like, so living in Austin, the sky looks like the beginning of every Simpsons episode. It's nice and blue with the white puffy clouds.
Yes.
And then you move to the gray, right?
Yes.
And it's gray all except 3 months a year. And then, and then to Northern California where it's not super warm, but at least the weather's a lot better.
Northern California has some of the most beautiful scenery I've ever seen, though.
Yeah.
So when did you move to Northern California?
1999.
Okay. Tell me about what you did with your career once you got to California, because it sounds like you're still there.
I am, but in a different part.
Okay.
Yeah. So we were in Northern California. I worked in San Francisco. So I did grad school while I was there. I had started grad school in Seattle and then stopped because we were leaving, and then did a different grad program in Northern California.
And what was your graduate degree?
English.
Okay.
Yes. And I had been doing a bit of an MBA while we were in Seattle, and I had been accepted to a master's for not-for-profit leadership program right before we left.
Yeah. And so you've always been a multi-passionate person.
Yes.
Specifically, I have a theory about like creatives and writers, but it goes hand in hand with learning. That desire to learn goes alongside that desire to create. And I don't know about you, but for me, when I am learning, it feels the same way as I'm creating. Like I'm activating my creative mind as I learn. Yeah, that is awesome. I admire your ability to just continue through school and get a master's. I always like to take a moment to honor the fact that you did go through those programs, because I think often in our lives, they're just letters. But actually it took a lot of time, right?
It did
to go through all those things. And then even just to go through the process of deciding, am I going to go to an MBA for nonprofit leadership, or am I going to go to university and get my degree in English. There was prayer, I'm sure, discernment, and then also just the right doors open. And then you, just as you did with your first husband, you decide whether or not that is what is in alignment with your heart at the time, which sometimes is a hard way. Sounds like you had to learn some lessons the hard way, but you are clearly a learner. So I just wanted to take a moment to just celebrate that and reflect on that. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, I believe in lifelong learning. I think it's part of or it can be part of our journeys here as humans.
Yes.
Some people choose for it not to be.
Right.
But it can be the journey. One semester into my graduate program, I got asked to start teaching classes at a university, not as a grad assistant, but as an actual professor. So I started doing that. Then that evolved into me teaching at a second school. And a few years into that, like 2.5 years into us being in California, I got offered a chair position at a place of higher ed. So I became a department chair.
Look at you. You are already equipped, though.
Ripe old age of something stupid like 32. I don't know. The woman I was replacing had been in that role for 36 years. And the professors who were directly reporting to me were all but one of them were very much older than I was and had been there a lot longer.
How did you navigate that? Because that is a situation I think that a lot of young leaders are facing in this season right now. They are being they're being assigned roles or elected into roles or offered roles where the ones they're managing are actually younger than them. I know that's been something that I've been navigating through the last several years.
I was in a unique situation where the person who was in this role before me intentionally burnt bridges. She was ill and knew she was retiring and angry about some things. And so she literally caused some problems and was proud about it. Like she sat me down and told me like, wow, I did this and I did that.
Oh my gosh.
Like, okay. And she also tried to give me inside dirt, if you will, on all the people that were reporting to me and about never give this one responsibility and don't do that. And I just took it all with a grain of salt and didn't tell her that. I acted cordial.
Well, what are you supposed to do in that situation?
Nothing.
Yeah. You just listen and laugh awkwardly.
Yeah. What I saw as my first order of business, and this comes pretty intuitive to me, is that my first order of business was I needed to build back those bridges or even create bridges where there weren't any to begin with. I, on my own dime, one by one, took any professor or adjunct that reported to me out to lunch individually.
Wow.
And I talked to them about, one, what did they like about the department? 2, what did they not like about the department? 3, if it was up to them, what things would they change and how would they change them? And 4, what expectations did they have of me as their new leader? And I did something similar with all the chairs of the other departments that I had to work with. I didn't do all the chairs of all the departments, but I did the ones that we had to work closely with. Did the same thing. Lunches with them, talked to them about how do you see my department's role in the organization as a whole? What would you like to see done differently?
Yeah.
Where do you think we're doing really well? Because that, to me, getting that kind of feedback is priceless, number one, but it also shows that I'm not going to come in there as a tyrant and tell you I know everything, and that every job anybody does, you have to collaborate with people.
Yeah,
even if you're the CEO, you still collaborate with everybody.
We see what happens when leaders don't. We've seen it. Did you find that they were responsive and honest?
Yeah, for the most part. I had one professor who was she was an adjunct in my department who sometimes had a little bit of an attitude. And she flat out said to me at the lunch, I wanted that role. And I said, based on what experience? And I wasn't asking her like in a snarky kind of way.
Right.
She taught one class there. That was it. She had gone there as an undergrad, not even as a grad student. And I'm not even sure she had a graduate degree. And so I was just curious as to, okay, what's your line of thinking about why you deserved this? And in a space where they didn't even solicit the job, like it didn't go out for recs or anything like that, right?
Yeah.
They literally the president of the school said to me, hey, will you do this? Yeah. Because I had already been working them through their reaccreditation process. Since I was a writer, they hired me to do that separate from the teaching that I was doing and asked, could you figure this out and help us through this? And so had this big responsibility for their reaccreditation, which is how he knew me. And that's when my boss announced her retirement. And he was like, oh, Jill's going in this space because she knows what she's doing.
Because you saw it, you learned
Yeah.
So I'm going to loop around real fast back to your marriage. You have mentioned, obviously, we've given context. That was your first marriage, implying that there is a second marriage.
Yes.
So tell me a little bit about your journey as much as you want.
I had an amazing marriage. We were really, I would say, in a lot of ways, equals. Our relationship, our partnership was structured that way. And that worked really well for us. And we understood each other well and we respected each other well. We had a lot of fun together because we did a lot of traveling. We were parents to 2 dogs and had a good dog sitter. And he was also super flexible because any of my students that had needs, some of them ended up living with us on and off. They ended up unhoused or whatever. And it was like, no, you can come stay with us. And
you were a caretaker.
Yeah.
So you've done, and that's another theme throughout your life. He's been super
flexible with that. Yeah, I was. And it's actually you saying that segues into this kind of nicely. One of the people that lived with us was there with a baby for 2.5 years who was escaping a bad situation of her own. She moved. She actually left to go back to her home country with the baby to see her parents and stayed. Then a few months later, one of our dogs the dog had never been sick at all, ended up being diagnosed with lymphoma. And so we went through 12 months of chemo and caring for the dog. The other dog had already been diagnosed 2 years before with Cushing's disease. And the vet kept asking me what we were doing because she had lived longer than any dog he had ever seen with Cushing's disease. So we went through those kind of tragedy situations of the friend leaving and the baby being gone from our household. Yeah. And then the dog stuff. And with all of that, my husband's mental health started deteriorating. And it especially after the dogs died the following year. The 2 dogs died 6 weeks apart. Wow. And it was devastating. And because they were like really our kids, right?
Yeah.
And this got bad enough that my husband spent a lot of time in a robe, laying on the couch, staring at the ceiling. One of the days, it was a week of my birthday, he spent 17 hours talking about the kids that had committed suicide at Palo Alto High School did it wrong and walked me through the engineering of each one of them and why.
He just was having a complete mental breakdown.
Yeah.
Yeah.
After months and months of being devastated and pleading and will you see a doctor? Will you go to somebody? And him kept saying no. I started issuing ultimatums.
Yeah.
Because
at some point I
didn't know what else to do.
Yeah.
And it just kept going that way and got to the point where I knew that for my own mental health and for my own well-being, that I needed to get out as a household because we all make choices. And if your answer is something that I can't live with, even though it's killing me because I know that you're destroying yourself, I eventually have to make a choice. And I personally did that, but I think we as humans have to do that. It's like I can't keep doing this. And the irony of all of that is when I was getting to that point of, or maybe it's the blessing in all of it, not the irony, is that I was working full-time at the one school as the department chair and teaching, and I was working half-time at a Catholic university in the evenings.
Yeah.
In 10 days, in the month of July, I got phone calls offering me jobs other places. I had not applied to a single place.
Wow.
I was like, I told the first place, I'm like, no, I'm not looking for a job. I'm not interested. And they're like, come on, just consider, come in for a meeting, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, no.
Where was it?
It was in the same area where we lived and the other side of the water, but in what's called the East Bay. The second call came in 2 or 3 days later, and I was like, what the heck is going on? Yeah. No, I'm not interested. I'm going back to school in August. And it was just like, no. And then the next day, a third call came in. Then it was like, I must be being told that I need to move on. As much as I wasn't sure I liked that idea, I agreed with the third call that I'd at least take the meeting.
Yeah.
And so I took the meeting, and it was supposed to be an hour-long thing before lunch. And 4 hours later, I was leaving there. The guy had said to me when I first came in the door, he said, I was 85% sure before you got here that I wanted to hire you. Now I'm 100% sure. What's it going to take? And I've written numerous books on how to negotiate jobs and increase your income and stuff. And I was just like, oh, this is interesting. So I did the advice that I recommend in there, which throw out a range. And in this case, it was like way higher than I knew they wanted to pay.
Yeah.
And he literally did this, whoa, wait a minute. That's more than I was thinking, even with benefits. And I said to him very kindly, I said, that's okay, because I don't need to come work here. I can stay doing what I'm doing. And he's like, don't say that. I'm going to need to call my board because that's more than we allocated for this position. And I said, okay, you do that. And he said, I'll call you back tomorrow. He's like, and it was a Friday that I saw him. And so he was talking about calling me on Saturday. And he said, because if this goes through, I want you to start on Monday. And I was like, okay, like it's summer vacation. So I'm not teaching at this point. And that Monday was like the first Monday of August. And so I went back home, drove back home, called my boss at my schools, both of them, and said, so here's the situation. It looks like I might not be coming back or something. I don't know. And we talked about what that might look like. And he called me the next day and he said, so I can do this. And
at the full amount that you asked for?
I gave him the range and he started me at the lower part of the range, which was fine because it literally almost doubled my income because teaching at schools doesn't pay well.
For sure.
And
how many opportunities in life do you get that? But also how perfect that those were the books that you wrote.
Yeah. And I started the following Monday. I told him that if I started the Monday that I had to come in later because I had a doctor's appointment that morning. It was my annual OBGYN appointment.
Yeah.
And so I said, I can come, but I have to be a little late. And he said, okay. So I went to that appointment, and on Wednesday, the doctor's office called me and said, we think you have a huge fibroid and you need to go get an ultrasound. So literally 8 days into my brand new job, I had a full hysterectomy.
Are you serious?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
And it was crazy. But my first thought actually was when I was told I needed a hysterectomy was like, I've been going through all this basically trauma at home with my spouse and his struggles. And of course I have a big tumor in my intimacy chakra. Like what? Of course. This makes total sense to me. And I pretty much said that to the doctor. And I was like, yeah, of course. It was about the size of an American football.
Oh my gosh.
It was huge. And yeah, so I had surgery 8 days after, and I didn't have to stand and teach or anything. I had a desk job, so I went back to work after a week.
Oh, wow.
Since I didn't have to lift anything.
So how long were you at that job before you pivoted again?
18 months.
Okay.
In that 18 months, I was hired as a director, was promoted to a vice president, and then I was promoted to chief of staff, second only to the CEO.
Wow.
In the 18 months. In the last 10 and a half months of that time period, I was on 132 airplanes and realized that was not sustainable. That kind of life was not sustainable. Too many airplanes, not enough, as we talked before this started about self-care.
Yes.
Not enough time. So though airplanes and airports are my happy place, like they really are.
Me too,
that was
honestly.
Just an insane amount because half the time I was flying home, doing a load of laundry, repacking the suitcase, and then leaving again. And so it's like you can't sustain relationships with people that way very easily. You're never seeing anybody. And during those 18 months, my grandmother died too. And so that was towards the end of it. And so when I realized that it just was like, this isn't, and it was feeling a little bit crazy. There was some toxicity in the office place. So I'm in the middle of, I'm separated. I've been separated now at this point for the year and a half. I had a Thanksgiving meal with I was still married, but with my husband. And then I decided to take myself to a spa for 3 days up in Calistoga, and I'm hanging out in the mineral pool by myself. And I'm like, I should quit. As I'm floating around, I'm like, yeah, that's what I should do. I should quit. I don't need this craziness. And then I thought, that's insane that you're thinking about just walking off your job.
Yeah.
And I had a nice salary. Like I said, it was racking up frequent flyer miles. And it was like, but I thought, this isn't worth it. I spent the whole time I was at the hotel and at the spa, I spent doing the next 6 weeks of my work in that weekend. So all of the reports that were due, everything else, got them all done, handed them all in, assigned tasks that I knew that were going to need to be covered eventually down the line in a couple months to my program manager and other people. And then I wrote a 4-page letter of resignation and sent it to my boss and the person who chaired the board and explained, like, this is why I'm done here. This is who everything went to. All the work is done. It's all caught up. I explained where everything was. And I handed in the resignation on a Sunday night. On Monday, the board chair flew in from where she lived, which was out of state. She spent the whole day in the office with my colleagues. She took me to dinner that night, told me her intention was to ask me to come back until she spent the whole day with my colleagues. And she said, I didn't realize the state of basically that it was so dysfunctional there. And so I can't, in good conscience and integrity, ask you to come back.
That's rare too, to have somebody who would admit that and be willing to come and see the situation themselves.
Yeah.
Wow.
And so she told me that any letters of recommendation I needed to let her know, she'd be happy to help me find a new job. But that day, that Monday, it was made public that I had left, and university started calling and asking me to do consulting. The first place that called was a university in Hawaii. So I got to do a multiple month project in Hawaii. And so it was really amazing.
Before we get into creative processing, I would love to be able to leave the listeners with your main takeaways from your life.
Yeah. So as I said, that marriage was in 2011 is when I moved out and into a new place closer to the new job. I still was back and forth a lot to the other house. And in 2013, it was a really busy year. And in October, so I was doing a lot of painting then. I did a lot of painting through like fine art kind of painting.
Yeah. What was your medium?
Acrylics and oils, mainly acrylics because they dry quicker.
Yeah.
But I was doing a lot of that to process emotions as I was going through the breakup. So I was painting a lot. I read Martha Beck's book, Steering by Starlight, also in that time period. And I was doing drawings based on things that she was saying. And I realized my best friend is about 30 years older than me. And that's how she and I became best friends is a whole other story for a different time. And the job that I had there is how I met her. I realized I hadn't seen her in about 18 months because of the crazy job. And so I decided to fly up to Seattle and see her. She has 4 sons. In 2008, she had breast cancer surgery, and I had flown up, and her husband had died in January from Alzheimer's and Alzheimer complications. We went to the funeral. My husband and I went to the funeral or the memorial service in January. In April, she was diagnosed with breast cancer, which often happens after women have gone through a trauma of some kind, at least in my experience. Yeah. So she scheduled the surgery, and I said, it was as soon as classes ended for me. So I said, I'll fly up, I'll take you to the surgery, I'll stay with you for a week or 2 weeks if you need and take care of you. So that's what I did. While I was there in 2008, I was still very married then. One of her sons came over to see her a couple times while she was in recovery. We chatted and stuff. I thought, this is really weird. Like, he and I seem to have some kind of connection, and I don't understand that. And he was very bitterly divorced and angry. I was still very married, but I just was like, oh, that's just one of those things, whatever. Didn't talk to him or see him after that. He did get a new job in 2010. His mom had told me, so I sent him an email and just said, congratulations, I heard you got a big promotion, whatever. And he responded, but he told me later he'd wondered why this married person was sending him a message where I was just trying to be nice and friendly. Yeah. So in 2000, if we fast forward to 2013, I realized I hadn't seen her. So I decided to fly up to Seattle. I had a couple days free before I had to fly to Japan and drop off 15 paintings. I flew up to Seattle to see her, and she picks me up from the airport. It's Saturday night. We're sitting in her living room having a glass of wine. And she says something about her youngest son and says, I always thought that you and he would get together. And I was like, no, Like, he doesn't, I love her youngest son dearly. Like, we're good friends, but he doesn't appeal to me like on that kind of level. I'm like, no, if I was going to date any of your sons, it would be Rick. And then I'm like, oh my gosh, what did I just say? What just came out of my mouth?
Yes.
And so the next morning, she's supposed to go to a brunch for one of the daughter-in-laws. And she's come with me to the brunch. And we walk into the restaurant and there's an empty seat next to Rick. And she says, Jill's going to sit right here. And I looked at her like, oh, you like,
Yeah,
you
yeah,
rascal here.
yeah.
And she sat way at the other end of the table. Rick and I started talking, and over the course of the few hours we were there, we talked back and forth. And apparently, two of his kids were across the table from him, texting each other under the table, going, "We've never seen Dad laugh and smile so much like this. What's going on?" They were teenagers. So that night, he and I texted, and the next day we had our first date. And so that was October. The first date was October 6th in
So a whole new life
2013.
started.
And by the end of the next year, we were married, and I was divorced and we were married.
Yeah.
And so,
Just to be clear.
yeah, we didn't, until I met him, Darren and I, my first husband, we didn't file or anything because we just thought there was no reason to.
Yeah.
And so when I realized that this was actually something,
Yeah.
like with Rick, I said to him, like, okay, we need to file for divorce. and he's like, yeah, that's good.
So
He's like, we can do that.
So you've been married now for over
I've been married for 10 years. This will be
10
year 11.
years.
Yeah.
Wow,
I was
congratulations.
married 18 years legally the first time, but we split up at year 15.
Now you're 10 years into hopefully a joyful marriage. It looks like from your accomplishments that you have really rebuilt a life that looks a whole lot different than it did when you were in your first marriage.
Yeah.
Also utilizing the skills that you have developed over the course of your entire life.
Yeah.
I'd love for you to tell me a little bit about how you started or how you created this program, your flagship program, I believe.
So I got asked by a textbook company to write a book called Creating a Freelance Career.
You did it.
I was doing some work for them on somebody else's book, and they said, do you have any ideas for a book? And I was like, yeah, because I had written a number of books, but I think this was my 8th book, this book, Creating a Freelance Career. And they wanted it for people in communications and broadcast journalism and creative disciplines, clearly. And the book itself has 26 case studies of people who started their own either solopreneur or entrepreneurial journeys.
Amazing.
So it's graphic designers and musicians and game developers and
all kinds of creative freelancers.
People who were producers and directors and all kinds of things. So the book came out, and I realized I probably needed a website for the book, and I was doing a lot of publicity around it. I have a really amazing publicist that I've worked with for 20 years now. I built the website and started pretty much since 2002. I've been teaching courses on writing for publication, courses on how to write really good dialogue descriptions and beginnings and endings and all kinds of things. I've been teaching courses the whole time at a Parks and Rec department and through writing centers and at a coffee shop. Like all these courses are like 5 weeks or 8 weeks long. And so I just decided to create a place where it was in all one location online. And the courses are still live. They're live but virtual, but when they used to be live and in person. But yeah, so that's how that all came about, was because of this one book.
That's amazing. And we are going to have that linked in the show notes. I just pulled the
Thank
link.
you. Yeah, so pulling all the stuff together that I've done. And I was already working with clients on editing things for probably a decade before this came out, or more, maybe a decade and a half, and helping people reach their writing goals. And so now it's just a more formalized system where you can actually like buy a whole package and get the whole thing for a certain price point. And yeah.
So are you working full-time as a writer and a speaker and as a freelancer, I guess, now?
I'm working 100% for myself.
Okay, you're self-employed.
During all of the businesses that I have, yes. The reason I hesitate to answer your question with just a simple yes is because I work per project, not per hour.
Okay. Yeah.
So I'm not putting in 40 hours a week most times.
So it's not about full time. It's about projects.
It's about projects and doing. I'm a big believer in I only work on things that I love. I only work with people that I love to work with.
Yes.
There was a little while there. That's one of my life lessons that I've learned is that you don't just work with people because they want to work with you.
Yeah.
Or because you think you need the money.
It's a hard life lesson to learn. I've been going through it too.
Yeah. There are times when you need to fire clients.
Yes.
Or you shouldn't have ever had them in the first place.
Yes.
But then you need to fire them.
Yes.
Yeah. And so that's one of the lessons that I've learned. Another lesson is that I should always trust my gut and what spirit tells me. Don't even question it. Okay, if I get a no or I'm not feeling comfortable about this because something feels off, heed the warning.
Don't ignore the red flags. That's been the lesson. I've been talking about it in my personal life a lot, but I think there's something really important about remembering the basics of like boundaries and the red flags. And for me, I've had to go through a season most recently where it's okay, I need to go back and read the books and learn these lessons so that I don't keep repeating the same mistakes, because it's so easy to ignore them or to see them as, oh, that's just normal. That's just human, or that's just a character flaw. And
no, it's that flaw that turns into the energy vampire. And you're like, oh my gosh, no
more. Yes. And there's just never enough. So that is a hard lesson to learn. But also, I love that you've been able to compile that lesson into something that is, I believe books are legacies. They're physical representation of your legacy. I love that you've been able to take that lifelong learning and put it into a book form for other people like me. That's now I wrote it down on my list by this today.
Oh, nice.
But I love that is what you have come to. So before we jump into that, let's just talk for a minute. I got to get on my soapbox about creative processing. Creative processing, by definition, the definition that was revealed to me is activating your creative mind to process any intention, any certain or specific intention. So it's different than the creative process because the creative process leads to an external result, whereas with creative processing, we're really looking to achieve an internal result. So, for instance, you had talked about in preparing for this episode how quiet environments and sound simulation are some of your favorite creative processing methods. I think you mentioned maybe an app.
I did.
Yes. So can you tell us about your favorite way to creatively process?
I have a few, but this, I don't know if you can see this little app right here. It's called Brainwave. And I regret to say that it's only for iOS, so only for Apple users.
Yeah, that's hard.
I'm sure there are comparable things for non-Apple users, but I only know that because I thought it was available for everybody, and I recommended it to a group of students once and like recently, and the Google phone users were like, I can't use this. And I was like, oh, I'm so sorry. The app it's interesting, but it has background settings. Like you can pick Ocean 1, Ocean 2, rain, forest, whatever kind of ambient music sounds. And then it's a Beats app, which means you have to listen to it with your earbuds because both ears have to have the sound directly in them to make your brain work.
Yes.
So it literally has morning coffee, espresso shot, morning meditation, focused and alert, gamma 40 focus, critical thinking, concentration, memory boost, problem solving, brainstorm, confidence boost, pre-exercise energy, creativity boost, which the creativity boost setting on 40 minutes is what I use as I'm writing.
Okay.
Like creative writing, positive mood boosts, euphoria, stress reduction, anger relief, calm reflection, reduce anxiety, deep relaxation, meditation, lucid dreaming, power nap, etc. It even has a headache relief setting that somehow, I don't know how it works, but I've never had it not work when I've had a headache.
That's huge.
It has hangover relief for those that are so inclined, yoga setting, an alpha relaxation, a theta wave meditation. I do that one every morning. It only recommends 10 minutes of it, and I feel like it makes your brain alive.
Yes, amazing.
A friend recommended it to me. At the time I bought it, it was $4.99. I think it might be $6.99 or $7.99 now. Best money ever spent.
Yeah, so it looks like it's Brainwave. Is it 37 binaural series?
Yeah.
Is that what it is? This one?
Advanced binaural programs.
Whoa, can we see?
Yours may have 37. This one may not. I don't know. But yeah, that's the
Well,
same
we will
company.
find, nonetheless, we
It's
will
the same
find the
company.
link.
It is the same company. So yes.
Perfect. So I will put the link to that app in the show notes as well. Jill, I am so honored to have spent some time with you here today and for just your willingness to share your story. And I definitely am going to want you to come back and share even more about the amazing things that you've done in these last few years of your career, and then even more so about what you're doing. I know I'm going to come on
I want
your
to talk to you
show.
about, let's talk about love some more.
Yes.
Started last November, the company, and it is a two-tier business model where one half of it is a multimedia company. So there's an online magazine. We do a talk show. I have visions of this talk show being done in every language on the planet by local hosts all the way around the world. And it is literally a talk show that talks about things people love. We're working on a documentary film. What other pieces of that? We have a bunch of merchandise that we have little superhero characters and all kinds of different ethnicities that say love is my superpower on them.
I love
So there's a whole
this.
Etsy store, and there's a store on our website for that kind of merchandise too. And then the second half of it is a heart-centered business consulting model. So where we go in with major corporations or even minor companies.
Yeah, smaller businesses.
Work with them on mission, visions, and values, and not just on a business level, but on departmental levels, on personal levels for their employees. Because if you're working at a company and you're just there for a paycheck, it's probably not aligned with your values.
Facts.
All about the money is the value.
Not my value, but I think it is some people's.
Yeah, but people do their best work when they're passionate about what they're doing and when they really believe in what they're doing, when it's not for just the money.
Yes.
We're working with companies to help all of their employees align with what the company wants to do.
That is so beautiful. Is this a nonprofit company?
So California has an interesting designation called social purpose corporation.
Okay.
So it's literally a corporation.
Yeah.
But it means that the reason the company exists is to perpetuate the good of either humanity or the planet.
Okay. That makes sense because it's let's talk about love.world.
Yes, it is. And I sat with that as I was picking the URL because .com and .org didn't feel right to me. And because my vision for it is much, much more expansive.
Yeah.
We literally want to start a movement of elevating love in the world. I believe that if we elevate love enough in the world, a lot of the hatred that's currently going on will then be overshadowed and will go away on its own.
That's amazing. Jill, can you tell us a little bit about what you're currently working on that you're most excited about, and any projects or anything that you want to share?
My brother and I write a cozy mystery series.
That's so fun.
The name Faith Walker. This was the Christmas book that came out, Canines and Candy Canes. It features a 28-year-old owner of a dog grooming service, Carter's Canine Coiffure. Her first name is Sarah, the woman. And it's vaguely set in somewhere in Iowa, but it's in the town of Cottageville. And it has all the quirky characters that any small town has, right?
Yeah.
And Sarah is an amateur sleuth. She has a Australian Red Hill or cattle dog named Whiskey. And she and Whiskey do all kinds of things in the town and get into all kinds of trouble. And we're having a blast writing the series together. We did 3 books last year. We have 3 books coming out this year. We had that book in December, and then we had a book in February come out for Valentine's Day. And we have a book coming out for 4th of July. And then there's another book coming out the book time frame takes place from Halloween to Thanksgiving for this year.
More books.
So Felonies and Fireworks will be the next book, and it comes out in June.
And all of these are available on your website, right?
They're available at whiskey.dogmysteries.com.
Whiskey
Dogmysteries.com. ghostwritten.com. They're also available anywhere books are sold, Amazon, etc.
Thank you, Jill, so much for being here. I also know that you wanted to potentially give Created Worthy listeners a special offer. Jill has so generously offered to give any listener of Created Worthy a 20% off discount using the code Created Worthy. And I believe that this is just for creating the freelancecareer.com, correct?
Yes.
Yes.
It is.
So any of the resources on there or books, your books are on there as well?
Yes.
20% off.
Some of them are. This one is. The other ones are. But
Yeah, the main book of creating the freelance career is on there.
Yes, it is.
Thank you again so much, Jill. You've really, truly inspired me and just encouraged my own walk in this unsure climate of being an entrepreneur or just of being a freelancer. I think sometimes like the culture, the world can be discouraging when we look around. But one thing that I've heard throughout your story today was to make sure that you're doing what you are specifically called to do.
I think the most important thing is following your heart and to know that whoever you are, wherever you are, there's people that love you.
Yeah.
I love you.
Yeah.
I believe in taking love everywhere we go to everybody that we come into contact with. So.
Beautiful. Yes. Love often, and you seem to do that so well yourself. All right,
Thank you.
Jill, thank you so
you.
much. You, my friend, are Created Worthy.
Hey, friend. Thanks for listening to my story on the Created Worthy podcast. I hope you took inspiration from it and learned something new. I love you. You've got this.
Thanks for listening and tuning in to the Created Worthy podcast. I hope that today's show resonated with you. And if it did, can you do me a huge favor and go leave a 5-star review? This helps more listeners find the show and it expands the reach of the stories and concepts that are shared here. All the links and guest information are in the show notes. And if you're on social media, come hang out with me. You can find the Created Worthy podcast on both Instagram and Facebook, or come follow along with my personal IG page where I just share more about the real, sometimes messy life of your fellow worthy warrior. Can't wait to talk to you soon, friend. And don't forget, we are all created worthy.
That refresh you've been putting off until the right deal came along? It's here! Wayfair's Black Friday and July sale is happening now, so you can finally get the style you've been waiting for less. Get up to 80% off area rugs and up to 60% off outdoor and bedroom furniture. Shop Wayfair's huge selection of styles and find the piece to fit your style, budget, and space. Plus, free shipping. Black Friday in July ends July 27th. Shop today at wayfair.com.
Wayfair, every style, every home.